So it is now 10 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and start. I'm going to introduce myself first. My name is Cassie Gilbert, and I'm a career coach at the NDSU Career and Advising Center. And we're going to be talking about faculty job search. And I'll let Jerry South also introduce himself as well.
Hi, my name is Jerry South, the Assistant Director for Career Coaching at the Career and Advising Center. We're happy you could join us. Just to let you know, I'll be moderating the chat as well. And this is going to be a recorded presentation. So
we are, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
We are recording now. And as we go through, if you guys have questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat and Jerry will bring them up when we are able to. And as we go through, I'm going to bring up a couple of examples that are actually on Google that are in a few of the search engines that I'm going to talk about today. And if you have any questions afterward as well, you are welcome to reach out. I also apologize. Maintenance and facilities has decided that now is a great time to mow the lawn. So I apologize if you hear that in the background as well. But like I said, as we go through, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to let us know and drop those in the chat so we can try and answer those as they come up. So as we go through, I'm going to be talking a little bit about research faculty positions and teaching faculty positions. There are going to be some master's level and doctoral level students who really are interested in getting teaching faculty positions that are research based, that they will have a teaching load, but that teaching load will be a little bit lower. Then there'll be some individuals who really want faculty positions that are really focused on teaching. They really don't necessarily want to have a really in-depth research agenda, and that's completely fine. It really depends on individual preference. Here we go. So a little bit more about our office. We do help master's level and doctoral level students. We can help you guys as much as you guys need. We do help with evaluated job offers, resume cover letter reviews. We can help you build out CVs if you need help with that too. We do help with teaching statements, diversity statements, research statements as well. Those are all things that you guys will need probably when you're looking at applying for those types of positions. So where do I start? There's a lot of different ways that you can start looking at faculty positions. If you're just really starting to look and you're really thinking about where you want to go and you're kind of debating between if you really want to go into academia or if you want to go into industry, or if you're just thinking about what kind of faculty position you're really interested in, there's some questions that you can ask yourself that will make this a little bit more easier to understand what you're looking for and what might fit your personality a little bit better. So what do you see yourself doing? So how do you see yourself working as a faculty member? Do you see yourself doing mostly research? Do you see yourself mostly teaching? There are several faculty positions throughout campuses across the United States and internationally that are a mixture of research, teaching, and running programs. There are some that are strictly research. There are some faculty positions that you can find that if you're not really interested in teaching a whole lot, you could work in a lab and you're still a faculty member, but you're strictly running a lab. Those positions do exist and you just have to dig a little bit to find them. There are faculty positions for pretty much any type of interest that you might have working in academia. There is a difference. So when you're looking at job descriptions, which we're going to look at a couple here in a little bit, there's a difference between the teaching loads of each of these different types of faculty positions. So when you're looking at job descriptions, you may see a course load of 4-4, which means 4 classes in the spring, 4 classes in the fall. Sorry, other way around, 4 classes in the fall, 4 classes in the spring. Or a 3-3, which is 3 classes in the fall, 3 classes in the spring, or 3-2. If you're at a 3-2, you might be looking at a lot of really research-heavy agenda with a mixture of teaching in it. You might also be looking at a faculty position that is not only teaching and research, but also some administrative duties as well. It really depends on what you end up applying for and what you agree with the university or the institution that you're applying with. What's your research about? You know, the institution that you're wanting to work for, you want to make sure that they value the type of research that you're interested in doing. Do you value being able to run a lab? Do you value those types of hands-on activities? If you do, you might want to consider, when you're looking at different types of institutions, whether or not they have the capacity to handle the research that you're looking at doing. Each individual university or institution is going to have a different type of capital in order to run labs, in order to do different types of research. So keep that in mind as you're looking at different jobs. Who do you see, yourself collaborating with? So thinking about different types of individuals that you really want to work with. If there is a particular type of field that you really want to work with and you would like them to be close at hand, does that institution have that major available? Do they have researchers working in that field close at hand, whether that be in academia or even in industry as well? You have the ability to build those relationships that you need to be successful in your research or in your teaching. If you're looking at teaching, do you have the ability to build relationships with others on the university campus or in the community to help your students achieve their own goals? Also, what are your goals? Do you want to really focus on staying in one spot for a long time, or do you want to kind of move around a little bit? There are going to be some positions that you see online for institution universities that are non-tenure track. Are you really wanting a tenure track position right out of graduation? There are some individuals who don't. There are some individuals who really want to focus on building up their experience before they move into a position that is a tenure track position.
Cassie, question for
Yeah.
you real quick. If you go back to that last slide, could you please explain what the 4-4, 3-3, and 3-2 means?
Yeah. So really quickly, the 4-4, 3-3, and 3-2 are teaching loads. So when you're looking at job descriptions, and we're actually going to look at a job description that's actually online right now here in a little bit, the 4-4 would be 4 courses in this fall, 4 courses in the spring. That would be pretty much a teaching load, strictly teaching, no research. 3-3 would probably be some research, maybe some administration. It really depends. And then 3-2, you're probably looking at a really heavy research agenda or a mixture of a lot of research and running a program or a lot of administration duties. You're also looking at probably advising graduate students, advising a lab, those different types of activities. So these numbers relate to course load that you'd be teaching in the fall and the spring. They do not include summer courses. So these 2 numbers do not include summer courses. Those would be something that you would talk to the university or the institution about separate, or the actual department probably actually. And so those would be completely separate from this.
All right, excellent. And one more question. Can you describe real briefly the difference between a tenure track and a non-tenure track?
So tenure track, you're going to some tenure. So when you're looking at positions online, you're going to be able to see what that tenure track, what they include in that tenure track. Tenure track, so I'm going to try and explain this in like the most simplified way possible. Tenure track and achieving tenure track is going to depend on what university you're at and what their goals are as a university are. So depending on what research, Carnegie research level they may have different requirements for achieving tenure track. So it could involve publishing a certain amount during a certain time period. It could include your evaluations for students as you're teaching. So there's a lot that goes into it. There's also like recommendations from other faculty that work with you. There's a lot that goes into achieving tenure track. And I don't even know all of it because I'm not a faculty member. And so with that would be something that when you're looking at doing tenure track, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but tenure track can be really rewarding. And it also means that you have a lot of, it comes with benefits, and it comes with some stability that is really respected within the within academics. And so it's something to talk to the department about and just kind of look at their website as well and see what their tenure track faculty are doing and how that is going for them as well, and see look at their website and see how many tenure track faculty they do have, or not tenure track, sorry, how many tenure faculty they do have, or how many tenure track faculty they currently have. That will give you an idea of how many faculty they've been recently hiring within probably the last 3 to 5 years. Getting tenure track depends on the individual, and there's usually a time limit on how long you can take to achieve tenure. So it just really depends on the university. But if whoever asked that question, we can talk later if that's a question that you want to go a little bit deeper into. There's a lot that goes into tenure track. So, but it does, like I said, have a lot of benefits to it.
Excellent, thank you.
So a couple of other questions. So what are your goals? So I just mentioned this a minute ago. So do you value close connections and community? How do you see your family life shifting over the next couple of years? If you have values that are important to you, have the institutions that you're looking at implemented programming. So thinking about you yourself, what do you value in an institution that you want to work with? Working at an institution as a faculty member is different than being there as a doctoral student. You have essentially dedicated yourself to promoting and providing success and opportunities for success for the students who go to that university or that institution. And so you want to make sure that you actually value what that university or that community really promises to the students and the families who come there. So that also will help you kind of determine, what's important to you in terms of size and the type of institution. So do you want to work at a smaller institution or a medium-sized institution or a large institution? There's going to be different factors for each one of those. There's also going to be the question of, there are going to be some religious institutions that you do find that have job openings. Those are going to be on an individual basis. We did do this presentation back in February, and this was a question that was asked about the religious institutions. And so my suggestion is, if you're interested in a position at one of those institutions, I would always reach out to them and just talk to them about, whether or not your values line up with theirs and what would be required of you in order to work there. Sometimes there is some extra work that's involved with working in a religious institution or university. Sometimes they do require you to sign some papers that say that you agree with the moral and religious values of that institution, or the religious underpinnings of why that institution was founded to begin with. So it just really depends on how you feel about that and whether or not you agree with that and can promote those values. Also, how important is geographic location? As faculty, one of the things that you guys have to deal with that hasn't been there before is obviously COVID. And so one of the things that institutions are grappling with, obviously, is finances. And so just pay attention to what they're doing in terms of their social media, their website, things like that, and how they've been handling COVID and their student success, their student mental health, their faculty mental health as well. And how they've been implementing ideas from faculty and staff into how they're operating this fall and this spring. I think those will be really important for you to be able to understand how the university as a whole values their staff and faculty and their student voices. Are there any questions for this one?
No questions.
Nope.
I have one question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Suppose, I'm pursuing currently PhD, so I get to know that our NDSU is in level 2 on research. So suppose you said while based on if my goals are related with research and some community development and with teaching with all 3 equal portions, and if I aim to apply for R1 universities, so how do we prepare ourselves and project our profile? Because I graduated from R2, so how I will be getting a job if I target for R1 research one universities?
So for you, you said you're looking at Research One, and so did you say you're looking at applying to online?
Yeah. I mean, I just suppose there is a position opened at One R1 universities, and I am graduated from R2 university.
Mhm.
And whatever the opportunities that I have during this period, suppose I got some best out of this universities, and that I project through my resume and submitted my profile for the position at R1 university.
Okay.
So, like, do you see the people, like in your expertise, like, do you see people transition from R2 to R1 level universities, the
Yeah.
students?
Yeah, it does happen. And so one of the things to keep in mind is that if you're trying to transition from an R2 to an R1, you do want to, regardless of what you're applying to, make sure that you tailor your resume and your documents that you're submitting to every institution or university that you're submitting it to. Especially if you're trying to move from an R2 to an R1, make sure that you do focus on your research and the implications of that research. I would take a look at the institution's website and the department's website and see what work that they've been doing that you can positively impact, and that you can actually work to kind of position them in a way that they could actually really benefit from the work that you do. That's a big way to help promote yourself to an R1 university, instead of kind of focusing mostly on, okay, here's my background experience and here's my education. You want to make sure that you do put in there like what your research is, what kind of impact it's had. That's something that we can talk about, and we can look at your resume or your CV, whichever one that you submitted, and we can look and see how you've done that. And that might be an opportunity to maybe move some things around and even shift out some of the wording too.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry about that for a second. My sound was really low and I don't know why, so. Okay, here's a couple of things to keep in mind as well. As you're going through this, flexibility can be really important. The hiring process is going to vary differently from every single institution that you apply to, okay? Some are going to require a resume, some are going to require a CV, some are going to require a teaching statement, others are going to require a teaching statement, a diversity statement, and a research statement. Some are going to require a letter of interest that they want you to include your research interest and your diversity statement and your teaching statement all together. There's going to be a lot of different things that you might have to submit. Just be flexible and give yourself some grace. Give yourself plenty of time as well. There is going to be some times where you're going to come across a faculty position that looks like it's absolutely perfect for you. And I would just take your time and make sure that you look through everything before you submit it. Try to take your time and not try to rush things. Just make sure that the things that you submit are the best that you can submit. And don't try to rush it, especially if you find one that the deadline is literally like the next day. Unless you have time to actually create it, tailor it, and like make sure that it's exactly what you want to submit, I would just really question yourself and just say, is this the documents that I really want to submit? Just take your time, because sometimes when you see these faculty positions, you get really excited because they look perfect. But when you dive a little bit deeper and look a little bit more into the descriptions, when you look a little bit more at the university, there can be some questions. A couple of other things that come up a lot when we're talking with doctoral students and master's level students about faculty positions is that not all job postings are going to include salaries. Actually, a lot of them don't. But what you can do is that you can look at the institution's classifications and see if they have them available on their HR site. That should give you an idea of where you might be looking. It really depends. You can also check Glassdoor to get ideas. The other thing that I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you higher ed jobs here in a couple of minutes, and this will show you some ideas as well of where there might be some salary ideas. Now, are these exact? No. But they give you some ideas of where you might be at. And that's where you're really going to be looking. Now, some of these job postings will include salaries, but not all of them. Another question that comes up is, what if there's a start date, but it says that ABD are eligible to apply? Okay. So ABD, if you're all but dissertation and you know that you're going to have your degree prior to the start date, go ahead and apply. And I would put in there, that you are all but dissertation, you are going to be graduating by this date and you would be eligible to start the position on this date. That would be where you're at. So there are going to be some that say that that you would have to have your degree in hand by the start date. There's also those as well. There is also the position that I'm going to show you today actually says, back up. There's going to be some that say that ABD are eligible past the start date. And so what that means is that you can apply as ABD even if you know that, like, let's say the position starts in August, even if you know that you will not technically graduate until December. So that should be still fine for you to apply to. What I would do in that case is I would actually contact the search committee contact and just make sure and just explain your situation and just give them the opportunity to talk with you and get to know you a little bit more, and just give them that opportunity to just give you a little bit more information and just make sure that they're fine with that. Honestly, it's polite, and it gives them an opportunity to remember you later on when they're looking at your documents and when they're looking at doing interviews as well. When you're looking at job descriptions, what do the percentages mean? A lot of times you'll look at a faculty position posting and it'll have different percentages, one for research, one for teaching, and one for service. And so you may see a position that will be like, let's say 30% teaching, 60% research, and 10% service. So that means that that's a research heavy position, okay? That service portion of it, that 10%, means that you're looking at doing things like advising students, serving on committees, advising student organizations. It could be doing things like volunteering. There's a lot of different activities that fall under that service category, and that would be something that you would just want to talk to the institution about and the department about and see what they actually count as that service. Are those
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
So ABD means all but dissertation, right? So
Yep.
I just completed my all coursework related with my PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So am I eligible to apply for positions at universities?
You would talk to your advisor about that and make sure that they would have you categorized as ABD. So I would just ask your advisor. You might be. It depends, because every so like for my particular doctoral program, it would actually be once I finish my coursework and I've passed my oral exam, then I would be considered all but dissertation. So like it depends on the program you're in. So I would ask your advisor and just make sure that they would categorize you as ABD. And if they would, then yeah, you would be fine to apply as long as you would meet the other requirements that they would want for the timeline.
Excuse me, Cassie.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is ABD? I don't know about that.
Okay, so ABD means all but dissertation. So usually it means that you've passed all your coursework and you've done everything else except for your dissertation. So like if you have an exam that's required as part of your doctoral or your master's program, then you might be considered ABD. I would talk to your advisor and see if they have that. If they have like an exam or anything that you have to pass after you've done your coursework before you move into dissertation phase. A lot of times if you're in like a STEM field, you're doing dissertation as you move through the program. So it's a little bit different. So I would just talk to your advisor and make sure that they would consider you ABD, that all but dissertation. And if you are, then you're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Got that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. One of the things to also keep an eye out for, not all institutions use the same job titles consistently across the US or internationally. So as you're looking through something, if something pops up and you think, you know what, this looks really interesting to me, take a look at it and see if you meet the qualifications, because sometimes it will look like you might not, but you actually might. Or it might look like you do and you really don't. It really depends on the institution and what they consider to be that level. It just really depends. And it's going to be determined also, sometimes it's determined by what research level they are too. It just really depends. So one of the examples of that would be like, sometimes the qualifications for like associate and assistant professor, sometimes they're different depending on the university that you're looking at applying to. So that would be why I would suggest just taking a look at it and making sure. Some documents that you're going to need. You're going to need a resume or a CV. Check the job description. Not all universities require a CV. A lot of master students and a lot of doctoral students are surprised by that. But not all universities or institutions require a CV to apply for a faculty position. It really depends on what their environment is like and what their culture is like. You're going to need a cover letter. That's almost a guarantee. You're probably going to need a diversity statement. You're going to need a teaching philosophy, and you're also going to need a research statement. Teaching philosophy, research statement, diversity statement, all of these are going to vary in length depending on the university and the institution. Some of them are going to tell you, some of them aren't. What I would do is that once you get to a point where you're looking at applying to a position, actually log into their application system and see if they give you a word length or a page length, because that will help you, because that way you won't start writing something and then realize that A, you either have something way too short or something way too long. There's no magic formula for these documents. There is no magic template. You can Google things and kind of get an idea. The biggest thing is that you want to be honest, you want to be realistic, but you also want to demonstrate how you have a dedication to students and student success, but also a dedication to those that you work with and the university as a whole. Those are big parts of these documents, the diversity statement, the teaching philosophy, and the research statement, that are kind of almost the hardest part, because you have to do it in a way that's professional, but also honest and realistic. And so as you're doing these, have someone else look at them. Like I said earlier, we help with these documents, and that can help you a lot with like understanding like whether or not what you said made sense, and whether or not, you know, you're coming across the way that you want to come across. It also helps with like grammar and sentence structure, those types of things. But the writing center the Graduate Writing Center would also be a great place to stop by as well. The more people that can look at these documents, the better. With your cover letter, really quickly, that is generally, you want to keep it to 1 page, okay? A lot of master's level and doctoral students, especially for faculty positions, try to make it as long as they possibly can. They want to try and fit everything that they can into this page, into their cover letter. You don't need to do that. The biggest thing is that you want to address the minimum qualifications and how you meet those minimum qualifications. And that's something that we can help you with too. And that's something that there's information about that on our website as well. So a little bit about the search process. Everybody approaches the search process a little bit differently. And this search process is by no means the way that you should do it, okay? Keep in mind, you guys are in programs that they're demanding. And so do this in a way that works for you, that doesn't cause you more stress. Do this in a way for you that works. You're gonna kind of figure out how this works better for you as you go through it. So a few things to know. Use the available organizational tools. This is gonna be really important. So one of the sites I'm going to show you is in higher ed jobs. They actually have an organizer tool that allows you to save the jobs that you're interested in. So use those organizational tools to your advantage, because you're going to be looking through a lot of different positions. You're not going to remember all of them. You're also not going to be able to find all of them later on either. So save copies of them that you're interested in or that you apply to, especially if you apply to them. I would actually print off a copy, like to PDF copy of the job description, and I would save it in a folder. That way you can come back to it later. Highlight phrasing that you know is going to be important. So we know right now that things like collaboration, a dedication to equity and diversity, a dedication to student success and like holistic student success are big trends in higher education right now. And so you want to make sure that you highlight the phrasing that you know is going to be important to your field, but also to academia. So pay attention to some of those words that you kind of, when you're reading those job descriptions, they really stand out to you. Sometimes it might be collaboration. Sometimes it might be communication. Sometimes it's going to be stuff that comes up from their mission and their vision as well. And those are going to be words that you want to use in like your CV, your resume, your cover letter, your diversity statements. In those documents, you want to use those throughout. Make notes of the full consideration deadline, okay? There are going to be positions that you find that are past that full consideration deadline, but they're still taking applications, and that might be because they didn't have any applicants who met the qualifications that they wanted. It is still completely fine to apply to those, and just be aware that there may be others still applying to it, or they may go back to someone who applied originally, but you would be put in the pool still for applicants. Also make a note of the search committee contact. This is going to be important, especially if you have any questions, because when these are no longer available, like the job descriptions, usually they're taken down. And so you won't be able to find that information to contact anyone if you have questions later on. And sometimes this process can take months. And so it can take a long time to find out if you made it past the initial screening, if you made it into the interview pool, if you got an interview, if you made it past that first interview and you made it to the second interview or the third interview. Right now, I would fully expect that your first interview might be either phone or Zoom or Skype or Microsoft Teams. That seems to be pretty common to begin with, but more than likely you are, as a faculty member, looking to interview for a position like that. You're looking at probably 2 to 3 interviews, probably 3 or 4. And one of those interviews is going to be a presentation. So that would be something to prepare for eventually. Also check their social media for the specific department that you're looking at applying to. The reason that we suggest this is because it tells you how they market their instructors and their faculty's research and their successes. So you want to make sure that if you're looking for a department that you know is going to help support you in your research and your interests, you want to make sure that they're marketing what you're doing. How are students supposed to know the work that you're doing if it's not being marketed by someone other than yourself? We have, our own forms of social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all those different types of things that, a lot of doctoral and master level students, they use to promote their own research. They use to promote their own work. But is the department itself also helping to promote that work? That's a question that you should always be asking yourself as you look at these different types of institutions. The first place you can look for positions, for faculty positions, is professional organizations. So I want to do a caveat here. I just want to do a caution to you guys. I use examples from the area of the program of my area of expertise. Okay, so I used higher education. I used the doctoral education programs. This is what I used. It's kind of my background to be able to do this in terms of like picking out some professional organizations or some job descriptions to show you guys. We can definitely look at some other ones today as well, but I thought these would be really good examples to show you guys. So most professional organizations in your field have jobs boards. So if you're not a member of a professional organization within your field, it might be something to look into and see if it's possible to join it. Most of them have a discounted price for students. And it's a way for them to way to post jobs that they have available, and it's a way for you to search for jobs. There are going to be a variety of different jobs depending on the organizations. It may not always be faculty positions, but that can kind of come in handy because you're going to be able to see what institutions are hiring and which ones aren't. You'll also be able to maybe see, you know what, this institution looks like it's really interesting. Maybe I should put them on a list to search later and see if they have any positions that open. So an example of this I put down was the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators. Another one that I have down is that I'm actually a part of is the American Historical Association. They send out an email every month that has a listing of jobs within history that are all over the United States. Now, some of them are faculty, but some of them are also like museum jobs. Some of them are zoo jobs. They're from a different variety of industries. And so those can also help you understand like what's also available outside of academia, but also would allow you to still teach or do research. So there's some options there. Higher education newsletters. So your field will have newsletters that you can sign up for that will just come into your email box on a regular basis. However, if you're looking at becoming faculty, I would highly recommend that you sign up for some higher education newsletters. One of the examples of this is Inside Higher Ed. What this does for you is that these are free. They have jobs in them. But what they also do is that they cover a wide range of topics that it would be really good for you to be knowledgeable about, because these are topics that faculty members should know about. They help you help your students. They also are things that you could address in your teaching statement, your diversity statement, your research agenda. There are things that will come up during an interview. So if you are knowledgeable about current trends in academia, this will help you do better in an interview. This will help you kind of connect with the individuals that you're interviewing with, because when you're interviewing for a faculty position, not everyone on that search committee may not be from your actual department. And so you may be able to connect with the other people on the search committee in a way that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. I did put a couple of examples on the Inside Higher Ed newsletter that just came in this morning. So these current trends that were in there were advancing equity, the disciplinary trench. This was about what would happen if universities or schools actually got rid of individual departments. And then holistic student success. I mentioned earlier that holistic student success is a big topic in higher education right now, just in academia in general, and how do schools address, mental health, physical health, and academics without overwhelming students and without spending so much money that they kind of run out. There's a lot of discussions that are going on within higher education right now, and these would be really good things for you to know about if you want to become a faculty member and you're looking at faculty positions. So the biggest faculty job search that you guys are probably going to be looking at is going to be higher ed jobs. And I'm going to show you higher ed jobs here in just a second. So this is a major source for jobs in academia. The jobs are added by the institutions themselves, and they are vetted by the institutions, okay? It's updated almost daily. So utilize their search updates. You can actually send yourself search updates, and you can send yourself notifications and things like that. This is also the platform that has the organizational tool that can save jobs for you. Be aware, though, that the job description may not include everything that's on the institution's websites. Sometimes benefits aren't mentioned, and sometimes contact names are not mentioned. Now, the two that I'm going to show you today actually have the contact names mentioned, and they're mentioned on, it's essentially the same job description used across higher ed jobs, the institution's website, and Indeed. Now, that does not always happen. And so when you're looking looking at different platforms and you're using different platforms to look at faculty positions, I would always start off with higher ed jobs and the actual institutions that you might be interested in first. But if you're looking at just like a general area, a general geographic area, and you're looking at, let's say, a tenure track assistant professor position, that might be a time when you can utilize Indeed pretty well. It just really depends. So university website, I said, these are great to utilize, especially if you know where you kind of have an idea of where you want to work. If you've done a lot of research already, this one might be a little bit more useful to you. This one's going to be a little more in depth as well, especially if you're interested in knowing about benefits. If you want to know about like what the actual application process looks like, this might be a little bit more useful. Larger search engines, obviously you can use those like Indeed, Glassdoor, Monster, all those different types of things. Those are definitely ones that you can use. They are more, I would recommend using them in a little bit more general, like I said, geographic and what type of position that you're looking for. It just really depends. But honestly, the higher ed jobs is the one that has been the most useful, and it does have a really great way to use the search tools. So I think that might be the best way to start off looking. However, it can be a little overwhelming because so many institutions and so many universities do use it. And so if you are looking at it and you feel yourself just like getting kind of sucked in and you feel like you're just getting a little bit overwhelmed, I would just take a step back and just give yourself a little bit of a break. Because you can do that and you can take a little bit too long of a look, and that's when you start clicking on things and saving things that you're not necessarily really that interested in, or you may not really meet what's needed for that position. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to move over to the 2 job descriptions that I'm going to show you guys. Do we have any questions so far right now?
There's no questions in the chat at the moment.
Okay. So the first one I'm going to show you is a tenure track assistant or associate professor. So the reason I'm showing you these 2 is because there's one on here that is a tenure track and there's one that is not a tenure track. One of these is strictly teaching. One of these is a heavy research based. Okay. This will give you an idea, no matter what field you are in, what some of these words might look like and what these job descriptions might look like, okay? What some of those differences might be. So this tenure track is going to be, you're going to notice here, it's going to say full-time, 9-month faculty appointment starting August 2021. You guys are in a good spot right now. You guys have a ton of time to look and give yourself the amount of time that you need to create good documents. This is a good time to start looking because a lot of universities and institutions start posting their faculty positions now in the fall for positions that are opening up next fall. So this is a great time to start looking. So what you'll notice down here as you move down, they're looking at candidates who will apply to enrich Mason's academic and culturally inclusive environment. But what we're also looking at is we're looking at this. So we're looking at the responsibilities. We notice here that it says a 2-2 teaching load. This is 2 in the fall, 2 in the spring. But it's also an active higher education research agenda. We're looking at George Mason University. We all know they're a research one. So this is one of the ones that you're looking at that you know that you're going to be required to have a heavy research agenda. So if you're looking at doing mostly teaching, this may not be the position for you. It may be something that you need to think about and say, you know what, this may not be the best position that I should be looking at. But you're also looking at advising and mentoring graduate students and serving on departmental college and university committees. Also, this one does say must hold a doctorate degree in higher education or related field to be completed by the start of employment. So this would be one where you would have to have that doctorate degree in hand by that August 2021 start date. You also want to look at the other preferred qualifications. This will be really helpful for you to understand like what other things you would want to potentially address within that cover letter. And then this one, obviously, there is no salary. Like I said, a lot of these, they're not going to say salary. And this is actually the same job description on the George Mason website. And it says the same thing here. So regardless of where it's at, it does not give the salary. And unfortunately, this one also doesn't give the pay band either. So it would make it a little bit more difficult to find out what exactly the salary would be. But one of the things that we can do is that usually on here, there is a link for an institutional profile, okay? So one of the great things about higher ed jobs is that it does have all this institutional information. Sometimes when you click on this, it will actually give you information about what the average person makes there. This one doesn't have it. Let's see. But it will tell you what the other current openings are. So sometimes what will happen is that you'll be able to see what other like faculty members are making at this university. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And it'll give you an idea of like what a tenure track faculty member makes, what a non-tenure track faculty member makes, what a staff member makes. It'll give you those different ideas. And as you go through this, I would, like I said, print this to PDF and save it if you're looking at actually applying for it. The other thing you can do is you can save it to your organizer. And what that does is that you can actually save it to your organizer and you can look at saved jobs, okay? And this will literally tell you like all the jobs that you've saved, and you can actually click on them and read them again. It will also give you an option to apply to them. You can apply through higher ed jobs, or you can apply through the institution's website. Personally, I prefer to just apply through the university's website. That way I know that everything is fine. Most of the time, this button will actually take you to the institution's website anyway, but sometimes it doesn't. It just really depends on how the university or the institution has it set up. This one is a little bit different. This one is the same position, but non-tenure track, and it's non-research. This is fully teaching. And so what we'll see here is that it still says that they want someone who's going to enrich Mason's academic and culturally inclusive environment. But as you go down, we're going to see like things like focusing on leadership, scholarship of teaching and learning. We're going to see things down here like they're seeking a collaborative, dedicated, and student-centered colleague who's going to teach a 4-4 course load. However, you can tell on here that it does say that there's the option for course reduction with administrative responsibilities. And like I said earlier, with that 3-2, you're looking at either more research or more administration or more administrative work, and that's what's happening here. That's what they're giving the option for. You're also looking at advising students, program development, internship or practicum supervision, or committee work. That's going to be that service part of it. And you're also looking at teaching, supporting, and advising graduate students in preparation for careers in higher education and student affairs. There's a lot of different things in here that we're kind of missing in this other one, this tenure track, because that tenure track is focusing on that research. They want you to be able to publish your research, get that research done, and be able to promote the reputation of George Mason as a Research One university. Again, this one, candidate must hold a doctoral degree in higher education by the start of the employment. This one, again, has those preferred qualifications. There is always like some ad statements in here. There's some special instructions. This one does give information about like how long the teaching statement can be, the diversity statement, and how many references you would need. This one also gives you the contact information for the search committee chair. The other one does as well, and they are two different people. So that's why writing those names down can be really important for you to remember, because if you're looking at the same position, it's very, they're not actually the same positions, but they're very similar positions at the same university. If you go back like a couple of weeks from now, you may just assume that it's the same search committee, but it's actually not. And so you want to make sure that you use that attention to detail that you do have, and just make sure that you're paying attention to what's going on. You send your questions to the right individuals.
Excuse me, Cassie. Just read the second point from special instructions to application: resume and or CV. So what do you prefer in this situation?
I would say that in this particular situation, I would almost always probably submit a CV. So if it says resume and or CV, I would say if you have a CV, go ahead and submit it. If you just have a resume and it's a really good resume, you could submit that as well. One of the things that might benefit someone looking at this particular position, because it's mostly teaching, if they have teaching experience that's not on their resume, but it's on their CV, then I would definitely say submit their CV. A lot of times as well, on a CV, you're going to have your professional organizations that you're part of that might not have made it onto your resume. I would also say in that case, you're looking at submitting your CV over your resume as well. It just really depends on what information is on your resume versus what information is on your CV. But more than likely in this particular instance, I would probably say you're probably looking at submitting a CV.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, but like I said, it's going to depend on what information's there and what you're able to match up with the job description. Yep, but that's a great question. So I'm going to show you guys as well what this looks like in Indeed. So I did the search for this exact same position within Indeed as well, the tenure track version of it. And so this is the information that's on Indeed. The same information is here. Honestly, it's just a little harder to read, but not much. And so the other thing that pops up here is that if you're interested in this particular area, this Virginia, DC area, you have other positions that are tenure track assistant or associate professor positions that show up, which is great. And so, but unfortunately for me, what I did was I just put in tenure track assistant or associate professor. So I didn't put in a specific area. And so if I was going to do this, if I was going to search through Indeed, I would want to be a little bit more specific next time, but I was specifically looking for this position. So they are on here. And this one actually says on here, 3 PP max for the teaching philosophy statement, the research statement, and this one does not ask for diversity statement. So it just really depends on the position. So there's a lot of different things here to take into consideration and just kind of go from there. But just really pay attention to what the different job descriptions are looking for and what you need to submit and how long you need to create those documents too. Okay, we have time for questions as well.
Okay, so when you say the list of documents, you mentioned diversity statement, teaching philosophy, research statement. So how do you differentiate, like, when you like in diverse statement, what actually we have to mention there?
So a lot of times what will happen is that when you look at the or when you log into their application system, they might have an actual prompt that they want you to talk about. Sometimes they won't. If they don't have a prompt that they really want you to address, like sometimes with diversity statements, they may want you to talk about how you've demonstrated a commitment to diversity, or how you have helped your students, your underserved population students, be successful in the classroom, and how have you promoted diversity on your campus. Those may be some things that you want to address in a diversity statement. One of the things I would do is that for that diversity statement, I would also take a look at their Office of Multicultural Affairs, as well as like their Office of Study Abroad, their Office of Student Affairs, and see what their diversity statement looks like. A lot of universities and institutions actually have a diversity statement. And so if you can relate back to that diversity statement and you can talk about it, that's what you really want to be able to do. The other thing you can do is that usually these are going to be 3 different documents, obviously, a lot of the time, not always, but sometimes, a lot of the time. For your research statement, a lot of what you want to do is you want to address what your research has been and what kind of impact it could have or has had, and also whether or not it's been published. Now, sometimes if you have a really low word count, you can just say something as simple as, this research was published in this magazine or this journal. It just really depends on your area, but there's some options there, and that's going to be where you're probably, especially if you have a lower word count, you might need to play around with the wording and see what works and what doesn't. Teaching statement, it's going to depend. Again, if let's say you are looking at a position where you know that you're going to be working with students in like a lab, or students who are going to be doing things like chemistry, things that are going to be a little bit more hands-on, or things in the sciences. That could be something where you talk about how important it is to make sure that the students understand that they can ask questions, that they can interact, that they can collaborate, and how you see yourself as what role you see yourself playing as the teacher or the faculty member within that classroom, and how you see yourself promoting learning within the classroom. A lot of times what will also happen is that you can talk about what types of technology have you used, what types of instructional techniques have you used in order to meet student needs. We all know that every student learns a little bit differently. So how are you adjusting what you're doing to make sure that the students are getting the most out of the information that they can? Those are all different things that you can do to help use within that teaching philosophy, that teaching statement. And that's things that you can kind of look at as well. Look at the department page, see what they kind of do, see what they kind of promote, see what their mission and vision is specifically. That might help you too.
Okay, I have a question. That's again, can you just pull out the slide ABD again?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to cooperate there for a second. So that one?
Yeah, I just missed the second last point. Maybe that's what do the percentage means.
So sometimes when you look at job descriptions, you're going to see percentages for research, percentages for teaching, and percentages for service. And so you may see something that says, instead of like a course load amount, like the 2.2 or the 3.2 or like the 4.4, you may see a percentage. So it may say like research 50%, teaching 40%, and service 10%. So like that may be something that you see. Now, it depends on what field you're in and what kind of position you're applying for. Those percentages might change. And so that would be something to talk about when you interview, and just ask, what does the teaching load actually look like? What would be my expectations for service? Is there anything in particular that you would really want me to participate in regards to service? Is there any type of committee work or positions that you were really hoping that this individual would take on? Those are all things that you could potentially talk to them about, but that's what those percentages are talking about. It's talking about that research. Let me see if I can find one really quick, actually. Once we get done with this, if you can stay on for a second, I'll see if I can find one that'll show that too.
All right, just another one. Like, are those negotiable? Like, how we can negotiate about them if they are fixed already?
They might not be fixed. It depends on the institution. Sometimes if you are someone who really wants to focus a little bit more on research and they have like teaching might be a little bit more than what you would want it to be, you could negotiate that percentage down a little bit. It depends on the university or the institution. You'd want to ask that. So like, let's say they have teaching is 60%, research is 30%. You could ask them, you know what, could we switch out one of these, one of my potential courses with a higher research load? That's a possibility. Or could I potentially switch out a little bit of my service to do more research? That could be something that can be talked about. It just really depends on the university and what the department needs.
Is it going to have an impact on interview?
Not necessarily, no. It really depends on how you approach it. And that would be something I wouldn't necessarily bring it up the very first interview. It might be something that I would bring up a little bit later on. They may bring it up with you. You could just say, you know what, I do have a really deep interest in research, and I did notice that this percentage was high, and I would be interested in potentially, you know, taking on a little bit more research eventually, depending on what the department needs are. That could be a conversation that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question here. So when I apply for a position and my situation is ABD, then my program, like I'll complete my dissertation after 2 years from now, but I applied for a position, you know, that is where it allows ABD students to apply. So the dissertation end date and this will not be any difference, right? It will not impact the position that we apply for.
So in that case, because yours would be a year after the start date, right? I would actually contact them and ask and see if they would be fine with that and make sure that they would be fine with that. There might be some flexibility there, and just make sure that they're okay with that. Yeah, that would be my only recommendation for that. And it would also depend on what your workload would be like with your district, like what that time period looks like. Because talking to them, calling them and talking to them about that might actually alleviate some of the questions they would have if you just submitted your cover letter and said, hey, this is what I'm looking at. In terms of timing, they may have a lot of questions about, well, what's her dissertation workload look like? So that might give you an opportunity to explain a little bit more what you are looking at in terms of time commitment with your dissertation and how that's going to impact your ability to teach and do research and those different types of things.
Okay. I'm sorry, I just interrupted. Do you want to say something? I think she just turned.
Please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So, Cassie, this question is not related maybe to this presentation for the time being. Someone has told me, like, if you want to apply for a faculty position, you must have a postdoc. It's strange for me. Do you agree with that?
So it depends on what field you're in. So are you, that can be something that we can talk about separately if you want. What's your field?
I'm working in civil engineering. It's about earthquake and geotechnical kind of engineering technical things. Okay,
let's talk about that, because that might be, it depends on the field that you're in. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And sometimes it depends on the university that you're applying to. If you're wanting to do research, I would say yes, probably it would be really helpful, and it would probably actually give you a lot more, give you a leg up at least at the bare minimum. Let's talk about that though.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can help with applying to postdocs and things like that too. So, and like getting those documents ready and things like that, and doing some searches and stuff.
All right.
Yeah, that's a good question. There are going to be some areas that do and some areas that don't. It just really depends, especially if you're looking at potentially wanting to get licensure in something. That's when the postdoc comes into play too.
Excuse me, Cassie.
Yeah.
First, thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful. I have a question regarding the research statements.
Yeah.
So should it be related to the research that we have done so far, or it should be cover our future research, that what we are going to do for the
I would do a little bit of both. So if you have past, like obviously you do want to talk about your past research, but I would also talk about how you see yourself working within the research that they're doing at the university, how you see yourself collaborating with the other individuals there to promote the research that they're doing and push that research forward. It's going to be a little bit of a mixture of both. I should have mentioned that earlier, but I didn't. I apologize. But it is going to be a little bit of both. But sometimes it's a little difficult to do that, especially I think that last job description that we kind of looked at said it was like 500 words or something like that. So that's something that you're going to have to play around with the wording and see what works and what doesn't. And you're not going to necessarily be able to talk about all of your research that you've done. It may be something where you talk more generally about your research and the impact that it's had, and how you see that research moving into the future and what kind of impact it could have not only on the university, but also on the community and the population as a whole.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. If you guys have any other questions, you guys are more than welcome to reach out to myself or any of the other career coaches at the Career and Advising Center. We can all help you guys. And so just let us know if you have questions, if you need help with anything, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like you have given very valuable information in this meeting. So yeah, I think it will obviously pop up once we start preparing these documents. So yeah, definitely we'll reach you out.
Thank you. Yeah, let us know if you guys have any questions as you guys are doing stuff. And your advisor, your dissertation chair, like all of those individuals can be really helpful. If you have a faculty member that you're really close with, like chatting with them too, they can be really helpful as well. And just having those conversations with them about what it actually is like to be a faculty member in your field can give you a lot of insight into what your daily life would actually look like.
All right. Yeah, there's no other questions in the chat at all. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Cassie. Phenomenal presentation. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie.